Hello everyone and welcome to another video in this channel. My name is Abraham Leal and today we're going to be working on the Spirited Away mask that we started on Sunday. If you haven't seen the video, I did a very quick sculpting of this thing right here. And today I wanted to work on a couple of extra details that I want to add. I want also to go into the retopology process, which was something that people were asking for. And after that, we're going to jump into texturing. Let's see how long this takes. But yeah, we're going to start with this. Remember, this is one of the assets that we're going to be including in our Japanese spooky realistic environment scene. So before we jump onto this, I just want to remind you guys that for the next, I believe at the time of this recording or at the time that you're watching this, we have 2 more days to make use of our 90% discount. If you want to learn how to do these things that we do here in the channel, and if you want to learn from the best, well, you can check this out here in Udemy. Hey guys, I'm here with a great deal for all of you. For the next 5 days, we're gonna be offering a 90% discount in all of our Udemy courses. 90% guys, this is the lowest we can go for our discounts, and you are gonna be learning from industry veterans and experts all of the workflows, techniques, tips and tricks that you want to become a great 3D artist. We have modeling, we have rigging, we have animation, we have sculpting, we have characters, environment, creatures, a little bit of everything. You can get a 90% discount for the next 5 days if you follow the link down here. All of the courses are recorded in real time, so you're not going to miss any part of the process. They include the project files. We have a support line for questions. You can ask questions on the site and we'll be getting back to you as soon as we can. And yeah, we are also offering a free 30-day money-back policy. So if you buy the course and you don't like it, I don't think it's going to happen. If you don't like it for any reason, you get your money back within 30 days of your purchase. No questions asked. You get your money back. So if you want to learn any 3D skill and you want to start this year strong with really good skills, really good fundamentals, make sure to check the link down here. Hurry up. Remember, this offer is only going to be available for 5 days. So join us and become an amazing 3D artist in no time. There we go. So the first thing I want to do with this guy is I want to do the little markings that he has on the face. And I've seen some people that have built the mask in real life, and they make it as sort of like a dip on the overall thing. So the way we can do this easily is with our masking brush. I'm gonna mask out the shapes that we're gonna have, and from the reference, it tends to be a little bit sharper here on the inside. It curves a little bit here towards the outer side. It goes to a really nice pointy edge up here. So I'm going to use Control and Alt to switch between adding or painting the mask and removing the mask. Something like this. There we go. So that will be the first the first indentation for our masks. I think we can go a little bit higher though. So I'm just going to make this a little bit longer. There we go. It takes time. Be patient. If you're doing 3D, one of the things that you definitely need to develop is a sort of patience. Here on the channel, I tend to speed run quite a bit, and I tend to go a little bit faster than I would do in normal production. If you guys have seen my courses, it usually takes 20, 25 hours to do a lot of stuff. So now we're going to do the underside of the face right here. Again, just round them off. Don't have to be perfect. And we actually have... I'm gonna remove a little bit of this thing right here. Again, trying to remove this as softly as possible because we seem to have some sort of bags on the eyes right here. I'm gonna create that specific element right there. There we go. Now let's round this guy off a little bit more. And I have on my other screen the reference. That's why I'm looking from one side to the other. So I want to make sure that we're getting as close as possible. Kind of want to bring this thing lower and a little bit longer. There we go. Again, Control and Alt to just paint the mask and get this sort of result. And then underneath the mouth, we have another little, it's like the shadow that we normally get underneath the lips. Like that. Or a little bit bigger. Not as curved. There we go. So just control click to invert the mask, and with W, I'm literally just gonna push these things in a little bit, like this. I'm actually gonna go to masking. I'm gonna say, there's an option here to make the mask more intense, sharpen mask. There we go. So that when we push this in, as you can see, we get a sharper effect on the wood itself. And that's it. Look at that. It's really, really good. Now, one thing I'm definitely gonna do is I'm gonna fill in a little bit of the details that we have right there, kind of like smooth them out, maybe even like trim dynamic, because I would expect someone who's like carving these things to just like soften them up as well and create something that looks a little bit more clean on that specific area, which is where the paint is going to be, right? Of course, texture is definitely going to help, but I really like this. It looks kind of old and kind of quite cool, I would say. I'm going to go with clay buildup. I'm going to remove symmetry, and I want to be a little bit more intense in certain areas right here. Now, let's talk about retopology, because that's the next step that we're going to be doing for this particular mask. And retopology requires us to create a low poly mesh that we will use to bake all of these details. If you haven't seen the normal map baking video that we did last week, make sure to check it out, because I explained how that works. And in that video, I explained that we need like three main things, such as having a low poly that's really close to the high poly, and we also need to make sure that the distribution is doing well and stuff. Now, we could do a manual retopology process with this one, but I want to try and see if we can get an automatic process first. So I'm going to duplicate this thing. As you can see, we have this one right here. And I'm going to isolate it just to be working on this one. And one thing that you're going to notice is if I turn on poly groups, you're going to see that we actually kept the poly groups from the initial live Boolean operation that we did. And this can be very handy, because if I go to geometry and I go to C-remesher, we can do something called keep groups. And if I C-remesh, which is going to do an automatic process to recreate this thing with a lower poly count, we might be able to get really, really, really clean loops here inside of Zbrush. Now, this process that I'm doing right here, I would probably only do it for things like this mask, which I know we're not going to be deforming. And yeah, I mean, look at that. Like, that looks really, really, really freaking good. And we only have 6,700 points, which is about like 12,000 polygons, which is not bad, like not bad at all. Now, as you can see, we're also actually getting some really like nice cuts right here. I just want to make sure that we're not getting any spirals. So I'm going to switch to C modeler here. And if we try to insert an edge loop on all of these loops right here, you can see that they're actually like proper loops, which is great. Normally, when we're working with this sort of tools, you might get spirals, and spirals are really, really, really bad. I'm going to show you one. I think this is, yeah, look at that. So the red face, as you can see right there, it's a huge spiral. Like, everything on the red face is spiraling around the whole surface. However, this could like work perfectly fine. Some of you might be like, okay, yeah, I want to do this, but I might want to have this be a little bit lower poly count. Like, is there a way to do it? And the answer is yes. We can go back here to C-remesher, and we can select this half option. And if we C-remesh, we're gonna get the exact same thing, but with half the geometry. And as you can see, we still have like clean edge loops right there, which is great. Clean edge loops right there, which is great. We pretty much get rid of the spirals. I mean, that's a big spiral, but I think this one's like a straight line and a straight line. Oh, some of them are straight lines, so some of them are spirals, which can be a little bit tricky, right? Complicated. But everything looks really, really nice. Even the mouth right here, that's a perfect spiral, well, a perfect loop, which is great. And even the border back here, this is great. So this right now, it's at 3,321 polygons. It's great. This could work very, very nicely. However, if I go out of the solo mode, you can see that we're actually like, we move things a little bit, and they might no longer perfectly match with the original high poly mesh, which is this one right here, the lower one. So I'm going to show you a technique here. I'm going to Control D to divide this like 3 times, okay, to 2,000, 1,200 polygons or whatever. And if I go to this mask now and I go to project, we can project all of the details from the high poly mask to this low poly mask. And now, as you can see, it's a lot closer to the surface. And the cool thing about this is, if we take a look at the details are going to look really nice. But the important thing is we can actually press Shift D and go all the way down to the lowest subdivision level. And this is the best like organization for faces that we can have to catch as much of the detail that we have from our oh my god. Wow, it couldn't be one of my videos without sneezing. I hate this, guys. I hate this. It's gonna be a meme by this point. Anyway, so this is the best thing we can do. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna export this thing. I'm literally gonna go, I don't have a map right here. Let's create a new folder. Oh, let's rename this folder to no face. There we go. I recommend exporting this as an FBX. This is gonna be no face underscore low. Just hit OK. And then we go to the underscore high, which is this one right here. And normally I would decimate this thing to like save myself a little bit of polygons. However, we're not even at 1,000,000 polygons and we already have a really nice detail. So this is, I would say, perfectly fine. So we're just gonna export this again here into our no face folder. And we're gonna export this as our no face high. There we go. So I'm gonna pause real quick, guys. I'm gonna jump into Maya and we're gonna be doing the UVs and preparing everything for the bigs, okay? Because as I mentioned, I do wanna jump into Texutring, like get this thing ready so that the next time we do our environment, we can actually get this guy inside the environment. So yeah, give me just 1 second. Very well, so we're inside of Maya now, and what we need to do, of course, is to import our stuff. We're gonna use this clean scene. No need to go into the main like tunnel scene right now. We're gonna go no face. We're gonna import our low poly. There we go, and then we're gonna say file, import, and import the high poly, just to make sure that everything is working as expected, which in this case it is. So if we take a look at the low poly, when we're doing bakes and preparing something for production, we need to make sure that a couple of things are happening. First of all, I'm gonna right click and assign a new material. I'm gonna assign at Maya just a very basic Lambert material. I'm gonna call this M as in material no face. And the reason I like to assign new materials is because when we import this into Substance, it takes the name of the material as an important flag, and it exports every single texture with that name like taken into account. So it's important to have like proper organization. The next thing is we need to talk about UVs. Some people think that we need to do UVs for the high poly, and that's not the case. Some of you might be like, well, but this is not a symmetrical structure. This is not like perfectly for animation and stuff. And you would be right. Like this is not something that we would animate. It's something that is going to exist on the world. It's not going to be deformed. It's always going to be moving as a solid. So we really don't need to be as careful about topology when doing things like this. When we're doing faces, and by the way, we're going to be doing a face this week, a female face. We do need to take care about other like important aspects. So let's go into the UV process. I'm going to say UV and I'm going to do a planar projection. A student corrected me not long ago talking about one of my processes where I always delete the UVs first. And I do that out of habit, but she was right. You don't actually need to do that. You can just like do a new planar mapping from the camera axis, which is the one that I particularly like. And that this will erase all of the UVs and give you a new UV. We also have a like complete guide to UVs that we did a couple of months ago. You might want to look for that in the channel. We have so many videos on the channel, guys. If you take a deep dive, you're going to find so much information. We've been doing this for almost 2 years now. So with this, as you can see, if we go to the UV editor, we're going to have a base of UV to work with. And now we need to think about the most important aspect of UVs, which is where are we going to be placing the cuts, right? So I'm going to go to UV. I'm going to see 3D UV and so tool. And we're going to do some cuts. And in this case, the easiest cuts would be to go right down the middle of the eyes. Why there? Because that's an area that's relatively hidden. It's going to unfold just right. It's going to work. And it's going to allow us to hide most of the stuff. We also want to separate the back of the mask from the front of the mask. And we can decide whether we want this on the border, like the outer border, or the inner border. If you ask me which one is better, I would probably say the inner border because it's a little bit more hidden. However, it's really not that much of a deal. A couple of years ago, when we didn't have as many like texturing tools as what we have right now with 3D Code and Substance Painter and Mari and stuff like that, it was really important to have like a really clean elements or really clean cuts. Nowadays, there's a little bit more wiggling room because due to the way that the texturing softwares work, you don't need to be as precise with your UVs. However, that doesn't mean that you don't have to do it or that you shouldn't do it because it's always important. So I've selected everything here. I'm going to go to UV editor, and I'm going to right click, select the UV shells, all of the UV shells right here, and I'm going to say modify, unfold. The unfold plugin must be turned on for this to work. And what you're going to get is this. As you can see, just this big masks right here. And it's just two of them. It's the front and the back. And the reason why we get front and back is because we did the cut on the center of the eyes and on the center of the face. And as you can see, this gives us a really, really nice and clean effect with the whole thing. We might get some weird texturing stretching on the side of the element, but again, thanks to the way we sculpted the high poly, it shouldn't be that much of a deal. Now, one thing that we also need to do is we need to lay this out. Control L is the shortcut. You can see right now we have I actually have a couple of options turned on that I don't want to have. Let me reset the tools. So I'm going to reset the settings. I want shell pre-rotation vertical, so they're like vertical. I want to preserve 3D ratios. I'm just going to hit apply. And as you can see, this is what we get. And this is all we need, like the two islands in one single UV space, both of them like proportionately accommodated, and everything is just like working exactly as what we would expect. So I'm going to select this guy. I'm going to say File, Export Selection. And back into our assets folder, we go to no face low, and we just export it on top. We didn't change anything about the, about the topology. We just changed the UVs. And now that we have UVs, we can go into Substance 3D Painter and we can do the bakes, and we can do a very basic texturing process. It's supposed to be an old wooden mask, so I don't want to do anything super extreme. I'm going to go File, New. We're going to select our assets here on the no face low, and hit open. Now I am going to do this at 4K because I want to have a lot of room for the whole thing. I'm going to turn off UDEMs because we're not using UDEM workflow, and I'm just going to hit OK. Now I am using one of the most recent versions of Substance Painter, well, the most recent at the time of this recording, which has a new baker. I've talked about this before. It's a really, really powerful and strong baker, really cool. It's right here, this little croissant thing. And once we go here, I can select 4K for our maps, because we've got really high maps as well. No face, hit open. That's the cage that we're going to be projecting. As you can see, we don't get any red spots or any weird spots. So that tells me that our bake is going to work perfectly fine. And we just say bake selected textures. And look at that beautiful result. That's the bakes of all of the like mesh maps that we're creating, the ambient occlusion, the curvature, everything. It's being produced right now. And we're going to be using these maps to add a little bit more detail to our whole project. So we return to painting mode, and look at this. This is our low poly mesh with the details of the high poly projected. So we can definitely see that we have this thing right here. So that might be a problem, right? Because when we created this elements right here, we actually like modified the silhouette. And right now this is not modifying the silhouette. It's just adding a visual like a thing. So here's one thing that I can show you. If we go here, you can actually turn height now. And if you turn height now, we're actually going to be baking something similar to what the displacement will do from a Zbrush. It's not the exact like 32-bit displacement, but it's still a displacement map that can be used to push the geometry up or down in our final result. You can see it. Well, it's going to be a little bit difficult to see right there, but you can see it a little bit on top of my face right here. Okay, see how it's like white and black? Those are the points that are pushing up and down. And we can use this height information later on as a displacement map to push things more if we need to. Now that we have this, we can start thinking about what kind of wood we want to use. I have a couple of like woods that I've been downloading ever since I started working with Substance. And for instance, I really like this H walnut wood. So I'm just going to drop this here. And one thing I'm going to do, of course, is I'm going to rotate this at 90 degrees so that the lines are going down. And look at how nice this thing looks, right? Like the lines and stuff. I'm definitely going to tile this a little bit more. Let's try a tile of 4. Ooh, that looks really good. And since we did sculpt the details on the high poly, I'm actually going to turn height off. So we don't want the height information of this thing to be influencing our element. Or if you do want to keep it, one thing you can do is you can go to the channels here. And if you go to your height channel, you can actually reduce the amount of influence that this thing has. So you have a little bit of influence right there just to get an extra little detail. Now, the mask is supposed to be white, but I actually don't want the mask to be like a white wood. I want this to be white paint. So if we go over here, we can actually grab a plastic matte paint, for instance, make this white. Now, one of my advices is never go to the corners of the square, because then you don't have any more range. So I'm going to go to something like this. I'm going to go for a more beige look. There we go, something like that. Look at that. That looks a lot better. And that allows me, if I want to add highlights later on, to add them. So to this thing, I'm going to add a black mask. and I'm gonna add a metal edgeware. So I'm gonna go add generator. We're gonna add a metal edgeware, which if we invert this, we're gonna get this sort of effect where we're seeing a little bit of the like destruction of the elements going through the effect. Now, I've shown this trick before. If you've been watching this video for 20 minutes, then you're welcome, because you're gonna be seeing this trick again, which is one of my favorite tricks to add more detail to the metal edgeware. It's one of those things that you don't have to be a pro artist to just do, and it's immediately going to make your stuff look even better. So the problem with metal edgeware, everyone who uses Substance Painter knows how to use metal edgeware. And if you don't know Substance Painter, now's your time. Go back and check, or go down here and check the code. But if you use Substance Painter and you're using metal edgeware, one of the things that you need to do, you need to break up the general effect that we're getting from the metal edgeware and from the dirt, which are the two main generators. What do I mean by this? Right now, as you can see, this metal edgeware is affecting every single border of our tool, right, of our element. And that's not how things like decay or get damaged in the real world. You're usually going to get more damage in certain areas and less damage in other areas. So what I'm going to do is as follows. I'm going to right click. I'm going to add a fill layer, and I'm going to look for something like a clouds. You can use any generator, any sort of like a procedural texture. I'm going to use this at clouds 2, for instance. And if I start increasing the balance and the contrast, I can create this very interesting looking clouds. See that? Like splotches of paint. I can go to the tiling and say, give me 3 tiles. There we go, something like this. And now if we multiply this against, or in this case, I think we need to always make this up. Inverse divide or divide. There we go. If we divide this by the metal edgeware, as you can see, we're removing metal edgeware from the place where the clouds are. So now, instead of having a metal edgeware everywhere, the clouds are helping me to hide a little bit of that metal edgeware from specific areas. And that, as you can see, is giving me a really nice and interesting result. Okay, very important to break things down. And the cool thing is this is procedural. So at any point I can go to the clouds and I can change the balance to add more or remove more. See that? So we can modify that effect. I can change the contrast if in case I want to make this like softer, like a softer gradient. And this is going to give me a more realistic result overall. We can also change things like the tiling. Like if we go high or low, things are going to be slightly different. We can change the seed, and this is going to give me random like cloud generations. And it's going to, again, give me a slightly different effect every single time. This is what's gonna make your stuff different from everyone else's stuff. The fact that you can play around with the generators and make things look a little bit more interesting. So now that we have this, one of the things that we're gonna do is we are gonna add a little bit of dirt. Dirt is really, really important. It helps quite a bit. And the easiest one to do is just a rust layer. So rust layer, add the black mask, right click, add the generator, and we're gonna add a dirt generator. Now you can see that we got rust everywhere on the inside. Is that something that you want? Maybe. But if you don't want that, what you can do is remove a little bit of the grunge amount. And that way we're only going to be getting a grunge on the crevices or on the things where rust and stuff would accumulate. So again, you decide how much of this you want. Now I'm definitely going to change the rust to a dark color. I don't want this to be like orange. So I'm going to do a dark color. And I normally like to set this to overlay. And then play a little bit with the opacity, because again, it's, well, actually, it should be on the color. There we go. So overlay, and then we reduce the opacity, because we don't want this to be like super like intense on the element. And it's just going to be like this extra layer of things that's going to give me a little bit more contrast and make things look just a little bit more realistic, okay? Now, let's do the paint, because we need paint. And I actually want the paint to be underneath the, like on top of this thing, but underneath the rust. So I'm going to add a fill layer, and we're going to go for like a purple sort of paint. I actually do want to keep this a little bit more glossy. I'm going to turn on symmetry up here, so we don't have this to do this 2 times. And we're just going to paint this with the crevices that we created, right? There we go. You can press Control and right click to make the brush a little bit smaller. We have this. We can go over here, or if you have a Wacom tablet or a pen display, you can also just paint on top of it. There we go. Over here. Perfect. So that way we get the nice like purple color that we have on the concept. We're missing a little bit there and a little bit there. Now this one, you can also go to overlay, which is gonna darken this, and you can of course play it with the opacity if you want things to be like a little bit less intense. But look at that, that's looking quite nice, right? Now let's add one more thing. I am gonna go to the plastic thing, to the paint itself. Or actually, I'm gonna show you a slightly different approach. I'm gonna Control D the walnut, get it on top here. It should be the exact same walnut. I just want color, to be honest. And I'm gonna right click, add a black mask, right click, add a fill layer, and we're gonna look for scratches. Scratches are a great way to add detail to the mask. Look at that. So just scratches that go all around the mask and add this very interesting effect of damage and old sort of effect, right? Now one thing I can do here is I can actually add a paint layer, go to my paintbrush, and if I grab something like the dirt, I can remove like the scratches that I would not expect to see. So I would probably not expect to see any scratches inside the paint, because since the paint is like lower than everything else, kind of want to like hide it, right? So we can push this out and just hide that effect, so we don't get that sort of like damage in those specific areas. We're gonna have the scratches on the outer part of the wood, but not on the inner part. That's it. Like with this, we have a pretty cool looking mask. However, I'm going to show you one final trick, and that's only for those of you that stuck to until the very end. So that way you get a little bit of an extra reward. So I'm going to go to Concrete Bear. This is one of the materials that I really like, and I really like Concrete Bear because if I add this onto the very top of the mask and I remove everything except for the color information, you can actually use this color information to add a visual interest to the whole thing. Look at that. Look at how nice that layer makes everything looks, right? And of course, if we like lower the opacity a little bit, we can still keep the paint, but now it's gonna look like it's stained or like there's variation on the color and stuff, and we get a really cool looking effect. Now, it really works when we're doing like really damaged stuff. All of the generators and stuff that we have here inside of Substance are really good for this kind of effect. When we go for cleaner things, we need to be a little bit more careful on other types of elements. But for this particular one, I think this is working just amazing. Like, look at that. Look at how nice that extra little touch gives us right there. Now, if you remember, we did have some really intense like damages over here. So I'm going to go to the paint again. I'm going to add a paint layer, and I'm going to manually go with like a harder brush, something like I think this is like dirt, like this dirt splash thing. And I'm going to remove a little bit of the wood or the damage that I would expect to see on some of these parts. Like this big chunk right here, I would not expect there to be any sort of like, what's the word, paint. So we're just gonna start damaging all of these pieces. And here's where the artistic thing comes into play, because you can start adding this sort of like damage. And this is again what's gonna like separate your work from everyone else's work. So all of this like spots, remember that we had like termites or something inside of Zbrush? That's the kind of stuff that we can start adding and modifying. And when people look at our stuff, it's going to look really interesting. So don't think that just because we are adding generators that we can't go like manually and pretty much like an artisan just decide where we want certain things or not. And that's it. This is going to give us, as you can see, a really nice result, a really creepy looking no face mask. We're going to be doing a little smoke simulation inside of Maya to create the body of this character for our spooky tunnel. So I'm just going to export the textures now. Well, let's of course save the scene before anything bad happens. Always save your scenes. So no face. It's going to be the texture scene. Simple as that. And we're going to say File, Export Textures. We're going to export. It can either be to the project itself or to the folder. It's fine. And very important here, we're going to export as Arnold AI standard. Okay. We hit export, and as you can see, we get base color, emissive, height, metalness, normal, and roughness. And that's pretty much all of the textures that we need. Look at this. Look at the base color. It's going to look beautiful. Look at all that complexity and things that we have here. And yeah, we're ready to bring this into Maya. Plug it into a material, and render it for our scene. Okay, so I'm just gonna do that off camera. I'm gonna stop the video right here. We're just gonna bring all of the maps in. The thumbnail, of course, has the proper like illumination and render things. But next time we work on the tunnel, I'm gonna like just import this thing back into the tunnel, and you're gonna see how everything looks super nice, integrated with the whole scene. So that's it, guys. Make sure to use the code. Last couple of days, make sure to just make good use of it. And if you want to see specific things here on the channel, let us know in the comments. Like, share, and subscriptions, of course, always helps. And big things are coming, guys. Big things are coming. I can't wait to tell you about all of this. So hang on tight, because we're just starting. I'll see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.